Hello there, and welcome to another Wrong Ways Columbia cast with me, Brendan Wrongway Corrigan. Now, the economic fallout from the coronavirus restrictions in place across the world is having a varied effect on individuals and businesses depending on the sector. Some are fortunate enough to be in industries where they can work from home in largely the same way as before this pandemic struck. In other areas, such as supermarkets and similar food stores, business remains strong, while the likes of delivery services are, by all accounts, doing quite well. Then you have the hospitality industry, whose entire business model is centred on having real bums on beds and seats. But with national and international travel practically at a complete standstill, there is little demand for hotels and hostels. Indeed, hostels in particular, as the default option for most backpackers, rely on international travel and much less so on the local market. It's probably fair to assume that in the coming weeks and months, many will be forced out of operation. Andy Farrington is owner of the well-known Cranky Croc hostel in the historic centre of Bogota, and I must add that the Cranky Croc was my first lodgings in this city all the way back in 2009. Andy, thanks for joining us in what I can only imagine is quite a worrying time for you. So how is business right now?
Yeah, thanks, Brendan. Well, like you can imagine, it's pretty quiet. It's never been this quiet before. Even I think in the first days of operation, I had more fun and excitement than what we're having in these few days. We have a few people here at the minute, which are just the people who got locked down and decided to do the first 4 days, then a further 2 weeks, another 2 weeks of quarantine with us, and are pretty much stuck actually. So that's where it's at with here. And from what I can gather from other hostels around the area, everyone who has not closed down, which are quite a few, are struggling along with 2 or 3 or 5 or maybe 10 or 12 guests who are also just maybe paying a weekly or monthly rate. So everything's kind of gone to survival mode. I don't think anyone's really thinking too hard about making any money at this time, but maybe in my case at least, it's just a matter of cutting some of the expenses down so that hopefully when it's all over, we're still able to be operating.
Yeah, you're talking about keeping the expenses down. So what exactly are you doing then in that regard?
Oh, when I say keeping the expenses down, I mean covering the expenses of what I should have said, mate. So
Yeah.
obviously there's some fixed costs. There's staff, which I've had to reduce their wages at the minute. And now we're looking at all sorts of contingencies. It's a bit hard I've got a team of guys and girls who have been working with me for quite a long time, and they're sort of part of a family here at the Cranky Croc, and we're kind of working out how to basically not just sustain the hostel over this period, but also them, because I don't think the employment environment outside of this industry is all that good at the minute for them to make a change just now either. So covering the covering the costs of things more than anything. So with the guests that we have here, we probably can cover at the minute about 40 or 50% of operational costs. The staff aren't actually coming in because the idea is to try to keep everybody at home and away from away from potential contagion. And of course, if any industry wants this to be over and done with quickly, it's our industry. So that's where it's so important for us to do that. So yeah, just basically trying to, with the few people we have, and doing things like turning the hot water off during the night time and just putting all the drinks in one fridge instead of 3, just little things that we have to try and work out what to do. The staff are taking a minimum salary at the minute until we either get back into operation or until we have to find something else for them.
Yeah, and how many staff would you normally have then?
So we have 12 normally, 12 staff. The nomina, which you call it, basically the payroll here is around about 20 million pesos per month. So obviously, well, kind of luckily, I had someone leaving anyways, was going to leave at the end of March, so she'd already resigned, and that's one less salary to worry about. And okay. Everyone else this month, like I say, they've all taken a minimum salary. We're looking at some of the government models of, there's a few offers out there to get loans to cover salaries, but at the minute they're loans that what they call a low interest, which might be 16% a year out here. So they're not very useful so far from what's been offered. There's a
Yeah.
employment subsidy. So with staff who have been paying a thing called kaha compensation, they're entitled to 3 months of like a two-thirds salary from their kaha compensation. So fortunately, we've always had them enrolled in everything that you're meant to. So they're all entitled to that, which will be the next step for us, is to basically officially dismiss them, get them on this what they call an unemployment subsidy for 3 months, and probably I'll just pay subsidise that with a bit extra so they can afford their rent and food in the meantime until I work out what we can do.
Okay, well, that's interesting to know that there is actually a little bit of government support, because I know they announced measures for the very poor, the poorest of the poor in the country. But in terms of an employer, you do have some government support at least.
Yeah, like I say, so that's a thing called kaha compensation, which is a compulsory when you pay your staff. If you're paying everything as you should, which
Uh-huh.
obviously not everybody's done, but fortunately that's always been what we've done here. So they're entitled to that. Like I say, it's only 3 months, and it's only two-thirds. It's basically two salaries over 3 months. But probably more importantly, it does cover their health care for 6 months. So that's one expense that I don't have to worry about, is paying their health as well for 6 months, even if I keep
Okay.
giving them something just to help them with their living costs.
But that was in place before this crisis. So is there any like additional support from the government coming your way?
So actually, that's an old thing that was in place, but it had not been used for a lot of years. So they reinstated that, the unemployment subsidy. And
Okay.
apart from that, the government's, well, like I say, they've offered what they do. They've got this fund, like a big sinking fund, that the government can get a hold of for these sort of emergencies. And what they do, they do it through a government bank called buggered. I've learned a lot about this the last few weeks. Obviously, read a lot because everyone's trying to work out what to do. So buggered, what they do, they're a bank that distributes money out to what they call first level banks, so like your local bank, to then distribute out to the public. And as a result, what happens is they charge the banks an interest rate plus, I guess, your consumer price index as well. And then what those banks do is they then offer the loans. Maybe the conditions to get the loan are a bit easier than usual for what they call a free investment loan, an inversion, libre inversion. And but they're also the most expensive loans. But I already have a leasing loan on the hostel, and I can take money against that. That's at 12.5% per year. But the rates of their free investment loans are 18%. And because they're getting this money support from the government, they've been obliged to drop it down by 2%. So the support that they're offering is basically, if we could think that in 3 months things would be back to normal, you'd sort of say, well, that's okay. I can put myself in debt, hold out for 3 months, and get back on up and running again. But we just don't know, and
Yeah.
that doesn't look like it's going to be. Doesn't look like it's going to be this year that we can kick off operationally properly again. So it's for a lot of businesses, I
Yeah.
think it's too
It's
hard.
very difficult. Yeah, exactly. Now, you mentioned, I think, you've 9 guests there at the minute, which are kind of, it's almost like an apartment. I'm guessing now the arrangement that you have with them, an apartment share. How long are they going to be there? Do you know? Or I guess they can't leave the country at the moment, or what's the story with those 9 guests?
So basically, for most of them, the idea is as soon as the what do you call it, the quarantine's over and done with, most of
Hmm.
them will probably try and head off to somewhere. Like even if they stay in the country, they'll try and go somewhere different. Actually, they're all sort of talking about they'll stay in Bogota for a few days anyways to see the sights. Got here under the quarantine and haven't had a chance to really see Bogota, and
Yeah.
so most of them are interested in that. The thing is, what do you see in Bogota when all the museums and bars and restaurants and Montserrat are all closed? So I mean, they can probably just walk the streets of the old area, and maybe looking at some of the rules that are coming out on the 27th, maybe they can't go to the parks or anything. So hard to say what they'll want to do, but it'll be the same wherever they go. So it's a hard choice for them too. If they just try and get flights and go home, I think it's their best option. and otherwise, or just wait it out. I mean, they're pretty happy here.
Yeah.
They're a good crowd, fortunately. No one's killed anyone yet.
Yeah, that is good, exactly. And do you have is it a good mix of nationalities there, or are they all the same, or what's the breakdown?
Yeah, it's completely mixed. I've got, what do I got? I've got an Argentine, an American, I've got a German couple who live in Tasmania. I've got three Swedish guys who got their first 2 weeks here were locked in a room. So they're pretty easy going about it all, given the situation. And yeah, it's a bit of a mix, really. Got an Australian guy too.
Of course, you did up the Cranky Croc, renovated it there in the last couple of years, if I'm correct. I haven't been down that way in a long time, actually. But so I'm guessing, in terms of the hostels in the centre, yours is probably one of the better ones to be in a quarantine and locked down in, compared to some of the others which are quite small and maybe don't have the same kind of space.
Yeah, well, certainly there's two people who are here who started their quarantine in another hostel and happened to get in touch, and I don't know which one they were saying. Well, I'm not going to say anyways, but
Yeah.
they weren't happy because they couldn't get any outdoors or anything. So I've got a little terrace outside. I've got open patios. The room where the Swedish guys are, they've got a private balcony to the outdoors. So even though they were locked in a room, they couldn't go into the social area of the hostel. They could at least sit outside. They're all sitting on the roof and sunbaking, and yeah, that's kind of obviously this. I guess, yeah, I did renovate it, and it's got some pretty good open areas. I've got a good kitchen going. Eddie, the chef, stayed on, and he's been doing meals for them, which makes them like he's a very good chef. So we've got good meals going. We've got the barbecue, we've got the ping pong table, a lot of beer pong, a lot of I don't know what they call it, but you race around the table playing ping pong. We've got,
All right.
the Australian guy's actually a salsa teacher, so he's been teaching salsa. We've been given English and Spanish lessons. So one girl's a yoga teacher. She's been taking yoga in the morning. So, like I say, they're kind of they're making the most of the situation, and they've got the basic facilities here to do it. I'm going to give them a project. Actually, I've got all these beer bottle tops that I've just got to get a great big chunk of wood and get them to stick beer bottle tops to it and try and make a logo out of it or something, just to keep them busy as well. So
okay,
that's the trick to it.
Yeah, nice. And of those 9, then are they actually like covering your expenses?
No, mate. No, it's probably. To be honest, it's a bit hard to calculate exactly, but at the minute, I'm probably covering about 40 to 50% of our costs with them, I guess, paying their rooms and whatever booze and food and stuff that they consume. That helps out a little bit as well. So yeah, I kind of, when I put out the promotion for the weekly rates, I was banking on maybe getting 20 people in, and like I say, we didn't quite get that many. So once we're committed to it, but even if I had nobody in the hostel at all, I'd still have to pay the staff for another month. I'd still have to pay the sort of the basic costs of having the building here. It still uses water and gas and electricity and stuff. So
of course, because I mean that must be the worry, Andy, that like when these 9 go, maybe in the next month, if things open up and they can leave, that there's going to be nobody coming to replace them then. And as you said, maybe you can survive for 3 months or whatever, but it's that long term, as I mentioned in the intro, that we just don't know how long this is going to go on. And you'd imagine that tourism is not going to pick up in the next 6 months. So that obviously is a big concern for you.
Yeah, so like I was mentioning, I think probably economically, we're kind of buggered for the year anyway. So just got to take that one on the chin. I've got some savings that are, like I say, I can probably get through about 3 months on. Then I'll have to make some drastic movements, I guess, with the staff. Just work out how to, help them to survive through it. They're very good. Like, they're basically family, so everyone's kind of agreed that, that we'll just each take what we need to get by on until we get through it. And I do have access to a loan. Like, I've spoken to the bank about with the loan that I already have on this and how much I can redraw on it, and also I've sort of done a contingency plan for. I'll probably hate to say how much it's going to be, but that'll get me through until probably July next year. So I'm hoping that it's not that long, but I'd rather bank on that. And if it's earlier, it's a bonus. But if you kind of bank on in 3 or 4 months, maybe things pick up again. You just live with this anxiety that maybe it doesn't. So
yeah, so it's like the old expression.
Trying to control.
Yeah. was going to say, hope for the best and plan for the worst, I guess, is the mentality that you have, yeah?
Yeah, you've got to, mate. Like honestly, the first maybe 10 days of this, I just lived with a headache. I couldn't. There's all this information coming in that none of it made sense. It was conflicting. The government would tell us something one day. I don't know if you've seen the list of the presidential decretos, the decrets, what they decree each day, but there's about a dozen of them every day. Each one's like got about 30 pages of garbage on it before you actually two-sentence point on it.
Yeah.
And it was crazy, and I was really stuck off. I think I was going nuts myself. I know a lot of mates in business who have bars and restaurants who you also know, mate. And once again, like I say, it's the anxiety of not knowing and therefore not being able to plan. And that's where I guess after I kind of got over this shock that lasted for about 10 days and started saying, right, I've got to pay school for the kids, rent for the house, loan repayments, all those sort of things that just don't add up when you don't have your business in good health. So just did a contingency plan, and first I did it until at first I was thinking July this year, and then I redid it again after hearing a bit more information for January, thinking because January is usually a good high season for us. But
Yeah.
then given, like I say, just to get, even though I was planning out to January, then I was still worrying about what happens if it doesn't, what happens. So I've planned it out now until July next year. I'll hold out as long as I can before I draw any money out on a loan, because what I'm basically doing, you're loaning money to pay off loans, which doesn't make sense when you pay the interest rates.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, that's
Yeah.
the plan just now.
Oh, yeah, well, I don't envy you in that. It sounds very difficult, of course, but also like the centre relies on a lot of tourism, that the historic centre of Bogota. So I'm guessing, as I said, I haven't been there, and with the quarantine and the lockdown, I won't be in the centre for another couple of weeks at least. Is it very quiet around there?
Yes, mate, it's incredibly quiet. It's like a ghost town, and it's actually really freaky when you're not used to it. Like it's a bustling sort of part of the city. There's always students, and even high season for the foreigners, there's always people around. There's little shops open up here, there, and everywhere. There's people selling things on the street normally. But I walk down from here to the Olympica 3 blocks away, and I don't think I've ever passed anybody on the street. And I can sit here at the reception now, looking at the video outside, and the street is just, like I say, it's like a Wild West ghost town. It's just the only thing it's missing is a few of those whirly twirlies blowing down the street.
Yeah, well, because I was thinking, like, obviously you said you've got the kitchen there and a chef that you could look at maybe branching out into offering takeout some food, but there's probably no one around to buy it in that part of town. Would I be right in saying that?
Yeah, I think there, like, obviously in the last few years, I'm not sure if you know, but in the last few years, a lot of buildings have gone up, and there is a lot of people who reside in the centre, mostly university students. But I
Hmm.
imagine, given the situation, a lot of them have, they don't have to come to university every day, so they've probably moved back to wherever their parents live, whether it's to the north, the south, or in other towns or whatever. They're doing their university from home. So I think that's part of it. The general population that's always here, obviously, almost every foreigner who might have been here is flown away now. So the general population's just disappeared, and then you've got the old population that was always here, and there's a couple of people in one house here and a couple in another one. A lot of those have moved out over the last few years, which is where you've got the explosion of new hostels and restaurants and things that have bought these old houses and done them up. Well, now they're all shut as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, I guess the restaurant initially, that was going to be my plan to get back up and moving again. Was to we've had the restaurant here, and we don't really open to the public publicly. Like, we have people from the public come in who know us and that, but we actually haven't got to the point of opening the doors to the public. So I thought, well, first thing we need to do is, I think restaurants will be open before hostels will have foreign traffic back through them again. So we'll get that up and running. And I thought wouldn't be that long away, but the more I look at these rules, I think the less likely it is that we're going to have a chance to open that. And maybe for home delivery or takeout, it's a little bit hard to start as that. I think, I'm not sure if it's something that we have to study still, get our head around it.
Okay. But are they part of this contingency plan that you have in your head?
To be honest, mate, my plan, my contingency plan is as if I won't make any money for the next 14 months.
Wow.
It'll be all based on what the living costs I have if the hostel is empty. I do have another plan too. Is I've got a couple of people who have moved into the hostel or are going to move into the hostel shortly and pay a monthly rent, that including some of my staff. So there is I can create a small income having people here, like almost like you get those student accommodation houses type of thing. And once again, that gives me the benefit of having people in the house is for security wise. I mean, there's been, I've heard on the news anyways, I'm not sure how true anything is, but there's been break-ins to a lot of businesses and things that have been left empty over this time. So it's good to always have someone around.
Yeah, for sure. I guess the thinking as well, Andy, from a positive side is that you get through this and come out the other side. And this is terrible for the other businesses around there, but some of the well, I'm going to say the less established hostels and restaurants maybe in the centre, they might have gone bust, gone to the wall, so that if you come out of it, you'll be standing tall.
Well, that's the plan, mate. I think we also, this is a good business. It's been sound. It's been going for over 12 years now, and although it's had its ups and downs in sense of better years and worse years, but it's always been a solid business. And I think that a lot of what's happened in the last few years with an explosion of offer has made it a bit of a tougher business, and a lot of the newer or smaller ones haven't done all that well. So I think this could be, like you say, unfortunately for them and potentially fortunately for those of us who make it through it, and hopefully I'm one of those, is that afterwards the demand hopefully comes back quickly. I imagine after being told not to go anywhere for a year and a half, people will be itching to travel. That's usually what happens. It's happened in the past when the Twin Towers got hit in the States and tourism kind of crumbled, and then when it all came back, people went nuts going travelling. So I think, the potential for the good days to come back is pretty high once this is over and done with. So that's why that contingency plan is so important.
Yeah, I'm going to quote Winston Churchill, as not usual an Irishman quotes Winston Churchill, but he's apparently said when you're going through hell, you got to keep going. So I guess this is the time. It's a bad moment, and obviously for a lot of industries, and especially yours, but this is the time obviously to just keep on going. And as I said, hopefully you come out the other side and then see brighter days again.
That's right, mate. I think there's a lot of things in history that have shown that those who tucked in and when times were tough, and mate, I think if a savvy businessman who actually has any money at the minute, who's in this industry, would go around buying up a lot of these places that have not been going too well, get them while they're cheap, maybe come out the other side of it and can make a better business out of them, I think would be a great opportunity. Once again, but I don't know anyone who's got money just now, so...
Well, I was just going to say that, yeah, exactly. And anyone who does, I guess the working classes and middle classes, they're holding on to them. The very rich, perhaps, is probably something that will happen. The very wealthy will come in and mop up a lot of these places, but we'll see. Well, look, Andy, I appreciate you taking the time. Obviously, it's not too busy for you there, but I know you've got a lot of worries on your plate at the moment, but... fingers crossed that maybe in a year, who knows? It's all conjecture at this stage, isn't it? It's all guesswork. Nobody knows. But hopefully in 12 months or something like that things will get back to normality. Andy Farrington of the Cranky Croc Hostel, thank you very much for joining us on Wrong Ways Columbia Cast. No
worries, mate. Thanks a lot for having me.
Cheers, a pleasure. And if you do want to make contact with me here, you can get me on the Twitter handle at WA Corrigan and my Facebook page, Wrong Way Corrigan blog. And just, Andy, just finally to say as well that if there are people listening to this who maybe are looking for a place within the greater Bogota area, obviously get in touch with you via you're on Facebook and all of that, yeah?
Yeah, that's right, mate. Yeah, they can give us a call or anything. Even though we're kind of sleeping at night times now, but we're keeping the phones with us, and if anyone needs anything, or even they just want to, I don't know, if they need help or advice and anything, they're free to give us a yell and we'll see.
Cheers. Okay, lovely stuff, Andy.
If they want to come and stay, we've got plenty of space.
Okay, good stuff. I might take you up on that offer yet myself. All right then, Andy, thanks very much for that. All the best.
All right, likewise. Cheers, mate.